What's up YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. Today's video is part 2 out of 3 on how to replace your front brakes on a 100 series Land Cruiser or a Lexus LX 470. Just a quick recap. So far in part 1, I disassembled the whole front hub. I took off the caliper, took off the rotor, and took off the wheel bearings. Now in this video, I'm going to show you how to reassemble everything with brand new rotors, new wheel bearings, and axle flanges. So for all of you guys that have that clunk going from reverse to drive, make sure you pay attention. All the tools and parts that I use in this video will be listed in the description down below, so make sure you go and check that out. If you haven't already, make sure you go ahead and hit that like button. And for more Land Cruiser content, don't forget to subscribe. Now, let's get started. Brand new bearing from Toyota. I don't think these comes pre-packed. No, they do not come pre-packed. So I am going to have to pack these bearings. Oh, it comes with a new race too. You should change these, but I don't have a press. So I think I'm just gonna put the new bearing in. What do you think? Let me know in the comments down below. So this is the grease I'm going to be using. It's Mobil 1 synthetic grease. It's made for wheel bearings. You can just get it at Walmart or whatever. And now you have to pack these bearings. So what you want to do first, get a bunch of grease, put it on your palm, and then with the big side down, you want to scoop the grease in there. It takes a while, but eventually the grease will come out of the other side, and that's when you know it's properly packed. And you just keep on doing this all the way around the bearing. There we go. And then you rotate a little bit and do it all over again. Good times. So you see all the grease is coming out of the little roller bearings. So I've done it all the way around. It's really messy, and you're basically at this point you're ready to go. So what you want to do is put a little bit more grease on the race inside the hub. You can be pretty generous here because if there's too much, it just goes into the middle cavity on the wheel hub. There you go. Grease the inside of the bearing, and that's it. Now it's ready for the wheel bearing seal. Okay, so you've got, this is the part number for the new bearing seal. It's for the back of the hub. I'll have it listed in the description down below, but I would definitely recommend Toyota OEM parts for this, because I never want to do this again, and you know, they just work. I probably never have to for the life of the vehicle. Put some grease on here, nice and clean. A little bit on the inside too, so that the lip doesn't catch and tear, and you'll just have grease everywhere. It's not good. And you can see the flat side you want on the back of the hub. Okay, so now I got the seal in for the bearing in the back. Now what I did is, you don't want to hammer directly onto the seal because you'll mess it up. I used a piece of wood, covered it up, and hammered it this way. Just tapping it in nice and slow, making sure it goes in evenly. When it goes all the way in, you'll see it's pretty flush with the hub itself. So that's pretty much it. You've got a little bit of grease right here, which is fine because you want it to be greased up, so it slides on pretty easily without scratching stuff. So that's the back of the hub done. Now we gotta do the front side. This is the bearing for the front. Part number is right here. Again, definitely OEM Toyota. It's the way to go. It lasted 200,000 miles. I'm not complaining. Comes with a brand new race too, but I don't think I'm going to use it because I'm lazy. I don't have anything to press it out with. So Once you pack it, put it in, you're good to go. So now the bearings are all packed, they're ready to go back in. But before they go back in, make sure you put some grease on the race on the inside after we clean them off. They're pretty dry. Put some new grease on there. Be pretty generous about this one. Again, the excess grease will just go into that cavity in the center. Have some grease on the bearing itself. Front side, back side. Drop it in. So before we put the hub with the new bearings in here, you might as well clean off some of this old grease from the from the older bearings. You know, it probably doesn't matter, but I would clean it off, put new grease in there, and then put everything back together. So now that it's nice and clean, you put some new grease on there. Then we have, that's the part number right there. I'll have it in the description down below. Then we have, let's not drop this guy. Ta-da, my brand new rotor. So now you just gotta put the rotor and the hub back together. These little 17 mil, 5 of them. So now I'm just gonna zap these 17s back on. There we go. And then just be careful, because when you have this hub flipped upside down, the front wheel bearing might pop out. That's what happened to me. It's no big deal. We're gonna put the hub on like this, then put the front wheel bearing in. Now I put grease on the spindle. Everything's ready to go in. So what you want to do is just pop the entire hub back on like this. There it goes. And then I'm going to put the front wheel bearing back on. This guy right here. Squish it in. There we go. Look at that. Almost there. Don't forget this guy. This is the little key thing that holds the front wheel bearing in. And there's a little slot on the side that matches with this little indentation right here. See that right there? You just gotta put it in like that. Let me put a little bit of grease on this. Grease on everything. Put this guy back in. Grease up that side of it too. So once you've got the thrust bearing in place, you want to put this, I guess it's like the spindle nut on to hold the hub onto the spindle. Now, according to the FSM, what you want to do is you want to torque this initially down to 43 foot-pounds tight, then back it off to where you can loosen it by hand, then torque it down to 4 foot-pounds. So that way you tighten it up, loosen it, and tighten it a little bit. So right now, this is 43 foot-pounds. That's 43. That's too tight if we were to drive on it, according to the FSM. So what we gotta do is back it off. Okay, now I can spin it by hand pretty easily. I want to torque it down to 4 foot-pounds now. Because 4 foot-pounds are how many inch-pounds? 48 inch-pounds, yeah. Let's give it a shot. that's pretty much it. There's not much there. So it doesn't move in or out, which is good. So now you're gonna put in the lock washer, then put the other nut back on. And that one, we're gonna torque down to 48. So it locks it in place so it doesn't move from this position. Now we have these little lock washers. Part numbers right there. You don't have to replace these, but they're like $1.50 or something at Toyota. So since I was ordering a bunch of stuff, I might as well do that. You want to line it up, the little slot again. Goes in right there. See that? Okay, now that you've got the lock washer in there, you can't really tap on it until you get the other nut in. So I'll put this guy in. And these I just reused. There's no reason why you can't reuse these unless you messed up the threads or something. But if you messed up the threads on these, you'd have way bigger problems than just these little nuts. There we go. Now we want the outer lock nut to be 47 foot-pounds. So trusty torque wrench, turn it. Make sure the wheel still spins. Seems to be okay. Now you can bend the tabs back. You want at least one backward so it holds the back nut, and one forward so it holds the forward nut. So now the lock nut is in there. The inside one is at 4 foot-pounds, pushing the bearings into the hub. The outer one is at 47, locking the inner one in so it will not increase in torque. That way, you know, if you torque down the inner one too much, you run the chance of pushing too much pressure onto the bearing and having them wear out prematurely. Now all I gotta do is put in the hub flange, the little cones, the nuts, and we're good to go. So before we put the flange on for the axle, put one of these gaskets on. Again from Toyota, this is the part number right here. And it looks like we are gonna go right there. This basically helps keep all the grease inside and not coming outside of the wheel hub. So this is the brand new axle flange from Toyota, part number right here. So it's pretty much exactly the same as the old one. But the reason why I'm changing this is because what I hear is these grooves wear out over time. So that's what makes the clunk when you go from reverse to drive. So let me just check it real quick. You see how when I turn this one left and right, there's no noise? If I do it with the old one, there's a little bit more play. You hear that? I don't know if you can hear it on the camera, but you hear that little rattle. That's basically what makes the clunking noise. So that's why we're changing this guy out. Normally, if the clunking noise doesn't matter to you, you don't have to change these out. These are like $60 a piece. But you know, while I'm here, I might as well. Let's put a little grease on the axle. That way everything slides in nice. And on the new flange, same thing. A little bit of grease. And then you'll see these little, I guess they're like dowels. They line up very, very nicely. Spin the hub a little bit, line them up, and it should go all the way in. Look how beautiful that is. That is amazing. Okay, so I also got some new cones for this. You know, one of those why not things. You don't really need to, but I did just cause. And what I'm gonna do is put these guys back in place. They basically center the flange. So there's 6 on each side, 12 total. Now, don't forget these lock washers that we took off from earlier. We go in first. 6 of them. And now we have these nuts. So according to the factory service manual, these nuts need to be torqued down to 26 foot-pounds. So make sure you snug them down first before you try to torque them down. You don't want to torque down one side completely because those cones are basically meant to center the axle flange, and you want them evenly torqued. There we go. Next, we're going to put in the snap ring. I'm just going to reuse the old one, seems fine. And make sure you can see the groove nice and clear, which we do. And just put it on. Put the dust cover back on. Make sure it's sitting pretty straight. Lightly tap it in with the hammer. Once it's flush, you're all done. This is all done with the wheel hub. So all I gotta do next is clean off the rotor, brake caliper back on with the new pads. That's it for this video. Hopefully you enjoyed it and learned something. Now that we have the whole front hub back together with new parts and on the vehicle, all that's left is putting the caliper back on, the brake pads, and also the new hardware. So for part 3, surprise, surprise, I'm gonna be putting the caliper back on, pushing the pistons in the caliper back in, and installing new brake pads and hardware onto the Land Cruiser. Last but not least, don't forget to hit that like button. And for more Land Cruiser videos and content, don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.